No, and so I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. And this webinar will be recorded, as most of our implementation webinars are. I do want to note that this morning Lisa Jones and the Commerce team also had a very similar webinar as part of their Wednesday webinar series. This, as I said, this webinar is really intended to answer your questions and go through some of the information that we've received as far as questions around regional planning. I will tell you that this information is by and large going to duplicate what was provided to you this morning at 10 o'clock. You know, that's, again, if you have other questions, certainly would be happy to field them this afternoon. I also want to recognize certainly our other core partners and their teams that are on the line, and you know, appreciate your continued partnership as we move forward in this process. Without further ado, I do want to go ahead and just kind of lay the groundwork, and then we'll open it up to some questions. And if we don't have the answers to all those questions, we'll be taking the notes in the chat pod, and we'll be posting those on a FAQ document that will be updated and posted on the Illinois WorkNet, the WIOA implementation site. Just want to make sure and point your attention to the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. There you will see three key documents that we will reference in today's webinar. It includes the FAQ, includes some background information about the planning process, and then also I believe the PowerPoint presentation is also posted there. And thank you, Mark. Yeah, I also noticed that that will be posted on the web page as well. So I also want to recognize that this webinar includes folks who are on the regional planning teams, and we have a mix of individuals as far as their involvement in the WIOA implementation process. But without kind of further ado, I do want to start with the WIOA planning process, and I see the PowerPoint is up now. So if you could maybe go to the next slide. This is what we'll try to cover quickly today, is give an overview of the process, look at the FAQs, and then talk about some of the next steps. Next slide, please. So again, we started, and this is to give you a context. So the document that is titled Illinois WIOA Planning Process, the intent there is to give you an idea of how this process links together. So you all should know that the new law requires a unified state plan. It also requires regional plans, and it also requires local plans. And local plans have been around for as long as WIA and now WIOA. And the piece that is new is the regional plans, and that is why we have worked with mayor and mayor on the regional planning process. So the process starts at the state plan, and it grows, right? So we have the state plan division, the guiding principles, and the major strategies that are included in the state plan are generally things that are the vision of workforce system in Illinois, and how we coordinate workforce education and economic development. So back in August, there was a major meeting that outlined what those vision statements were to be and the guiding principles, and further developed them into strategies. Next slide, please. Okay, and so the strategies will be included in much greater detail in the state unified plan. And again, these are fairly general statements, and they're part of some strategies, and from there we look at how the activities at the regional level and also at the local level can work toward accomplishing goals around the strategies, and so that is part of the process. So again, we're building on state level vision, principles, strategies, and we're going through a regional planning process, and that is something that we want to stress here, something that the law requires us to do. It's very specific around the use of data and the importance of looking at labor market information and the importance of industry sector strategies. And so that is our first step here in December, is to look at, what is the foundation of our regional plans, and it is around data. And so that is where we are starting with next week when we meet as groups in the three different regions. You'll get with your regional teams, and we will show you a process of analyzing labor market information, both on the demand side, as far as identifying industry sectors, as far as identifying those targeted occupations where you can coordinate resources. We're not asking you next week to walk away with all of your industry sectors and occupations decided. No, it is a opportunity to be trained, if you will, and do hands-on work with the data from your region to go through a 3 or 4 step process on the demand side, and then also on the supply side. So who are your job seekers? What do they look like? What do those demographics look like? So that is kind of the foundation, one of the core pieces of next week. Another piece is looking at a readiness assessment and looking at, based on the strategies that are included in the statewide plan, how are your regions positioned to address those strategies. And we know that every region may be a bit different, and some regions are further along in working through those strategies, and we want you to please identify studies and initiatives and other resources that should be noted through this process, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. And so as you make decisions around where you're focusing your coordinated resources, we're pulling from the information that has already been made public or is already in progress here, because we realize that this isn't a starting from scratch process. Regional action plans, that's also the intent there, to go through what are your next steps. And so those regional assessments, those are documents that your facilitators or your team leads have received, and hopefully they will be sent out to you this week. And Carrie and Gretchen, this may be a good point to pause here and see if you want to add anything else around the self-assessment and the action plans.
Sure, John. It's Gretchen. I can jump in. We did send the self-assessment to our team, so that's gone out to team members. And what we're asking folks to do is to take a look at that either together as a team and sort of complete it, through team discussion, or if it works better for them, team members can go through it individually and send their completed assessments back to their team point of contact to forward on to us. And then we'll be spending some time during the meeting discussing the self-assessment responses and talking through, where folks feel they are in relation to those strategies that are outlined there. But teams have the option either to come together to do it as a group or to do it individually. Either way, we're really looking forward to getting those back when folks have the opportunity to get them completed, just because it gives us some really great, insight into, sort of where team members feel they are right now and to help us talk through where we might want to focus during our time together next week. So that's helpful in terms of process.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. So I think there was a question from Jerry there. When are the self-assessments due back? We would encourage those to have those completed. So at your regional meeting. So complete those before you attend those meetings next week. I also want to emphasize that the planning process and the due dates. I know there's a lot of questions around the due dates. So the Unified State Plan, as many of you know, is due on March 3rd. The regional planning process will be included as a part of the Unified Plan. We do not anticipate that regional plans will be completed in March. We know that the process has started now, and we know that we have to have a completed plan that goes into effect starting on July the 1st of 2016. So we don't have a definitive date as to, what is the due date for your regional plans. And for that matter, we don't have a definitive date for when your local plans are to be due. But we know that they are to take effect on July the 1st, 2016. And we know that the U.S. Department of Labor are going to offer or finalize their guidelines around the regional and local planning process. And so we definitely look for that to have some more definitive guidance around what are our requirements as far as the documentation that we're going to need to operate, come July 1st. And so we will definitely work with you through all of our efforts through the regional planning process, through the local tags and other outreach methods to make sure that this information is brought out as soon as we have it. Okay, and so again, everything builds on each other. I want to make that point 100% clear that we have the vision, priorities, strategies of the state plan. We've got regional action plans that look at the key a process of identifying data, industry sectors, strategies around coordination, and then the local plans are intended to be operational, so it's the nuts and bolts. Well, we have the broad statements. We have the more definitive targets that are included in the regional plan, and the local plans are going to be, well, how do we get it done? What are the nuts and bolts, and what are the dollars and cents behind it? So that's how I think we envision the flow, and maybe we'll take a pause there to see if there's any questions around how everything fits together.
John, this is Mark Burgess with OET. I was part of the morning session of this, and I know one of the questions that came up maybe might be addressed here to the new group was, do they have to have a local plan and a regional plan, or can they have the local plan incorporated within the regional, so there's really only one plan if they so choose to?
Yeah, I think that will be the definitive answer will be in the guidance that DOL provides. My understanding is that from a technical standpoint, there will have to be two documents, and how much that local plan varies from your regional plan, we may have some latitude, but we will be able to specify what are the specific minimum requirements that are included in that regional plan and the local plan. And I think that that's part of the clarification that we're looking for. Any other questions or concerns about the process and how things kind of fit together from a big picture standpoint? Okay, so not seeing anybody chatting, so I'll go ahead and maybe if we can, just go through, some of the highlighted FAQ questions, and I think that I probably have touched on many of them already. Again, we're starting with a data-driven process, and your regional team leads that Mayor and Mayor are facilitating, those are really your leads. Those are your technical assistance leads, and they're there to provide their expertise as well as assist in other areas to pull in as you develop your regional plans. The process starts now and goes, we're anticipating at least through March, and it may go beyond that, but we anticipate that it's at least a 4-month process here. Next slide, please. So what are the expectations of agencies? Again, to participate in the plans, we will have specific guidance as far as, again, what are the minimum requirements in a regional plan, what are the core elements, and we are starting, obviously, on the data side in December, and I do anticipate that we will have additional information on the other elements that will come out as we move closer to the statewide summit as well. So expectations are to participate in and provide your expertise along with all of the other core partners and team members. Next slide. The phase 1, there was a project that we are, if you've been around, there was a series of 10 regional meetings back in the spring that we worked with the community college board on their strategic plan around workforce and education, and that was a great opportunity to do an initial data run, which we have available. There are also, and we're actually building off of that data, so we're refreshing and building off of that foundation. And that's important for you to note that information, will be referenced when we meet in next week. The final report around the information that was gathered from those 10 regional meetings, that is in a draft report that is currently being reviewed, I understand, by the community college board, and we will let you know as soon as that is released publicly. But I will tell you that those what were known as regional scans, those are available, and I do believe that they are posted on the web, and they're again more focused around your supply side of folks' demographic information. But this information will be built on with the data package that you receive for the regional planning process. Next slide, please. So again, the point of contact, logistics are always a challenge. And in an ideal world, we have a one point of contact who's able to coordinate, the meetings and schedules, and be able to reach out to all of the team members from the different agencies, and so that role is really to help facilitate that and to make sure that everyone is well informed, and then and work directly with our folks with Mayor and Mayor, and then also to help and assist as a lead point of contact where needed. And we really let this be a kind of an evolving process. We know that the team members were set up, and there may be needs to expand those team members or swap out folks if needed, and we will leave that to you at the region. That is, we want you to have ownership around those teams, and we have the points of contact, I believe, on the next slide, and it is also in the FAQ document. So their contact information should be included there as well. Let's see, what are the roles and responsibilities? I think I talked a bit about this as far as, again, looking at that data, looking at what are the required elements of that regional plan, where are opportunities to coordinate and collaborate with our services. Really, it's taking a regional approach to how we deliver services and where are the opportunities to make those connections. And so really, it's a building process. And so, again, it is I know that as Julio and others have mentioned in the past, this is a plan. This is how we're going to lay out how we can move forward and achieve a vision and goals here. And so the regional team, we do envision that after you come up with this plan, there's going to be an implementation side of this. And so we would hope that your teams would stick together because the devil is always in the implementation details. And so there is maybe a short-term planning horizon on all of this, but then the dirty and complicated work, if you will, really comes on the implementation side. And so we would hope that those teams would stick together as you move to the next level into the future. Next slide, please. Let's see. I think that's the same one there. Okay. We do not know several of our team members. Again, the state core partners assisted in identifying those initial team members. As the FAQ points out, I think that we looked at required partners, economic development, and human service / community development. And again, we don't want any regions or any agency to get too concerned about excluding folks. You have the opportunity to expand, although the message is make sure that those folks are value added in the process and that they have the best interest of the region at heart and that they're representative and that your group doesn't get too large and unwieldy where you can't govern by or you can't implement by committee. At some point you have to, there has to be kind of representation there. So all things to consider, but at the end of the day, we do push that to the regions and, to make that a more of a local decision. Next slide, please. I think I covered all of these. Next slide, please. What exactly so Carrie and Gretchen, do you want to kind of, would this be a good time to perhaps walk through the agenda a bit? Would that work for you?
Sure.
So maybe we can pull that up on the screen as the more detailed agenda there. I don't know if that is one of the docs that we have. I don't think it is. But I would just say that the expanded agenda, which hopefully all of you have received or will receive this week, outline in somewhat broad detail. What are our meeting objectives? What are our bottom lines, right? What do we want to get out of this? And hopefully those sessions that we have planned will get to that goal. Carrie or Gretchen, you want to kind of walk us through the day? That might be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I can. And Carrie, it's Gretchen. I'll jump in. Carrie, jump in if you have anything that you want to add. But I just did want to let folks on the line know that we did share the agenda out with our team, so that has been distributed. And in terms of sort of a broad flow for the day starts out with kind of an overview of this planning process and the vision for this process and the larger system vision under WIOA. We then will spend some time, talking more about the project and the process itself, as well as the breakout sessions that the teams will be participating in throughout the day. We have several breakout sessions for teams throughout the day. So we'll talk a little bit about those in terms of setting up what we're hoping to achieve throughout the day. And we'll be spending some time in our first breakout session with our teams, really kind of doing team introductions, getting to know one another where that hasn't quite happened yet, really kind of talking through the results of the self-assessment, so that we'll really be using that as a springboard to say what might some of our priorities be, and where do you think we shake out according to these various self-assessment characteristics. And then spend some time together in teams in that session doing a SWOT analysis, really kind of, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, relative to self-assessment results and what some potential priorities might be moving forward. We'll also, throughout all these conversations through the day, as you, John, mentioned, be talking with regions about identifying existing regional resources, assets that can be tapped and kind of woven together to support these plans. So we will be spending, that'll be in the morning, we'll have our first team session together. Over lunchtime, we will be, Dave Gallagher with Commerce will be sharing information about the data that will be shared with teams and used during the regional sessions. Going over that data, giving us an overview and giving us some guidance on how to use the data in subsequent planning sessions. Following lunch, we have our second team session, and that's really taking some time together to look at the industry and occupational data on the demand side and start thinking about potential target clusters of focus and potential strategies that teams want to begin drafting in order to support work in a target sector. So that's the second team session. We'll then have another data plenary session, if you will, to get an overview and introduction to more of the occupational supply side data. So looking at both sides of that equation, and then spending our third team session together, looking at that data, starting to think about some potential strategies that can support the needs of sectors from the supply side perspective and build those into teams' initial planning work. And then we'll be closing the day with very brief report outs from each team, just sharing with us, where they focus their activities and kind of where they got by the end of the day. So that's kind of a high-level overview of the flow throughout the day.
Great. And I guess with that, I want to open up the floor to some questions, if there's any questions about the agenda. And I think that the rest of the slide deck here, I think we've covered or are covered in the FAQ documents. I do want to point out the flashing on the screen there is the regional teams, and you can see that in better detail there on the FAQ document. And then obviously here are the details around the specific meetings with the local workforce areas and the specific dates. So with that, I want to definitely open up the floor. We've got at least 20 minutes here for questions around this process or other associated questions around the regional planning process. And it looks like there was a note there that all of the phone lines are unmuted if you'd like to jump in with any question. And so let's see, Jerry.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Evelina Loescher from IDES. I'm the Labor Market Information Director for the state of Illinois. I just wanted to say that I know that my staff has been working with Dave Gallagher and the rest of the team, but I have assigned a labor market economist to attend each of the meetings.
Great.
So we will have Dennis Hoffman in Effingham, Ron Payne in Bloomington, and Tom Austin in Chicago.
That's great, and thank you for that. And I again, sorry that I went quickly through at the beginning, and I do want to point out that this is a collaborative effort among all of our partners here, and our data team, and Ron and Nathan over at ICCB, and you know, we are definitely working as a team to pull this information together. And you know, definitely appreciate that on-site support, which is going to be critical, because we know that you're going to have questions around, well, how do we use this data? What does this mean? This is a lot of information to analyze in a short amount of time. And so hopefully we'll have some experts there who can, you know, float along with other facilitators to help assist. And we'll note that this is an ambitious agenda. There's no doubt about it. But this isn't our only opportunity. This is more of a starting point here. And so thank you for that comment.
Along those lines, this is Mike Williams up in Rockford. And I'm just curious, how current is the data that will be used in developing these plans?
Yeah, I'm not certain if we have anyone from the data team on the line. I'll have to defer that as a follow-up question, unless there's someone from the data team on. Okay, it doesn't sound like we have someone, so we'll get back to you on that, Mike. And then I do want to emphasize that we are outlining a methodology, and we certainly welcome other analysis that have been completed at the regional or even local workforce area level, as far as looking at the trends, looking at what the data is telling us around industry sectors and occupations, and looking at everything within a context of other studies and things to look at, you know, where are things moving. As an example, we are working with Mayor and Mayor, and they have you know, we worked to also look at their methodology and utilizing you know, their data trends. And you know, I think these other analyses can be complementary, but we're looking at a process of identifying data that is publicly available, that a process that is replicable for all of the regions. And so that's what we'll go through, and certainly can address, you know, as far as you know, how fresh the data is, right? I understand that is probably the core of your question.
Hey, John, it's Joanna Green from the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership.
Hey, Joanna.
Hey, so I just wondered, too, is if the folks that are coming representing the Title II and the community colleges, it would seem that they would be able to bring some information with them about the development of the ICCB state plan that they did with Meyer and Meyer. Is that, do you think that's possible?
Absolutely, and I should say that the core and what was under the under that process, the data team, which is actually several of the same folks, developed regional scans and worked, and they looked at projection data from the college side of things. They looked at population data. We did look at some industry data, and that information is available. I believe it's on our website, and those were that what was called an environmental scan, right, was handed out as part of those regional meetings, and that's publicly available now. but I would just point
Okay.
out that the information that we're building right now for the regional
Uh-huh.
process is building on top of that,
Okay.
and that data will be updated. But certainly as a starting point, if I was in your shoes, I would take a look at that environmental scan as a starting point and realize that that is almost like a primer to what we'll look at starting next week.
Okay, great. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we address some of the questions in the chat pod? We've got a first one where Courtney Yoki, hopefully I said that right. As a local economic development mentor, can you provide more information on who is in charge of organizing the local teams for a local plan, and when should that be accomplished?
Right. That's a great question. And so I think the bottom line to that is right now we have 10 local points of contact. And so from a logistics standpoint, that person is the one who is responsible for making sure that this process is moving forward in coordination with our core partners and the facilitators from mayor and mayor. So I know that's a complex answer to a simple question, but the bottom line is to get in touch with a point of contact. And, that process of expanding or swapping out individuals on a regional planning team is left at the regional and local level. And so would encourage you to work with your point of contact to, work through those logistics details.
John, it's Gretchen. I looked at Courtney's comment again, and there's actually there's a couple questions above that one I want to make sure we get to as well.
Sure.
I think, Courtney, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think you were asking for about the local plans specifically as opposed to the regional plans.
Courtney Yockey, and just wanted more information. I know we've kind of got a good grasp on the regional planning.
Sure.
Regional team, but when you come down to a local level, do I need to be contacting local officials and try to organize a team here?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't think we have a complete answer for you because in the past, the Workforce Investment Act has always required a local workforce plan. And there's a number of very similar elements that the new law requires. And at the end of the day, the local workforce boards are the ones that, in cooperation with the county board chairman or their CEOs, as they're known, right? They review and submit the local workforce area plans. And so, unfortunately, we don't have concrete guidance of, this is your template of how a local plan should be developed, but I could see where a similar process, could flow at the local level. But I do know that there is some on-the-ground experience with developing local plans, and that is within the workforce boards. And I believe that many of the points of contacts are affiliated with the workforce system, the Title I system. And so I would encourage you to contact that individual to see who your local WIB contact would be. And I do anticipate we'll have additional guidance out in the not too distant future here regarding requirements on the local plan and how that moves forward.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you going more in depth on that. I just don't want to get in too much of a time crunch and be as prepared as possible.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Yep.
I can, John. There was a question. This is Gretchen, sorry. There was a question that Jerry submitted there up towards the top. Will the survey be compiled prior to the regional meeting? And Jerry, I assume you mean the responses to the self-assessment. I just wanted to let you and the other teams know that as facilitators get completed self-assessments back from their team points of contact, we will be looking at those together as a group in advance of the regional meetings so that we can be prepared to talk with you about, generally here's where the team shook out on this particular area of the self-assessment, they were largely in agreement. Here's an area where different team members felt quite differently, so what does it mean that we've got some different perspectives there? So we will come prepared, ready to talk about, in a global sense, after reviewing all of the self-assessment responses, what kind of story they told taken all together. I hope that helps.
Okay, and it looks like, Pam, I think you had a question regarding the January meeting, and Mark, I think, responded to that, that the summit, which I think we had initially anticipated a January summit, we're looking at a February summit to be in line with additional information around planning guidance. Let's see, and Pam, again, will we be able to get the LMI data elements prior to the meeting? And I think that this is going to be limited outside of the environmental scans from the phase 1 that I see Josh has put a link in the chat box for. Again, I think that the intent of next week is to walk through a process of identifying the data. We will continue to put the data packages together as we move through December. But I do not anticipate that we'll have, a full data package to you prior to the meetings on Thursday, or starting next Wednesday, I'm sorry.
Fine. Come on, baby. Come on, baby.
Okay. Will any expenses of the region be passed to the local workforce boards? I'm not sure if I understand that question as far as, logistic expenses, travel, or, if you're referring to that, at this point there is no central pool of funding, and the state hasn't contemplated, how logistically you would pay for, going through this process. I know that the Title I, they do have a pool of funds that are certainly limited around transition, but we would have to take a look and see what specifically you're asking for on more of a case-by-case basis. If there was a specific need as far as funding for a regional planning activity, we would want to hear more information from you about that, and can have that discussion offline. I would say, as far as the coordination of resources and coordination of and delivery of services, I would definitely say that is one of the ultimate goals of the state and regional planning process, is how do we better coordinate our limited access and programs, and how can we more effectively and efficiently serve businesses and job seekers. That's really the bottom line. So that is really the ultimate goal out of all of this, is how do we improve and better coordinate workforce education and economic development. So to the extent that will have budget impacts and shifts in priorities of programs and operations, I would anticipate that would be an outcome of this process. But again, that is going to be driven at the local level. You're going to have to define that at the regional level, and so at the end of the day, the answer to that question is up to the region. So, Kim, how will the process tie into Talent Pipeline Management Guide recently? That's a great question. Vermilion County and the state and Vermilion Advantage and Vicki and Kim, I know you're involved in this. Has a project, I believe, working with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce around the talent pipeline management strategies, and talks about how we can develop strategies and be more responsive. Many of the strategies are consistent with what we're looking at the state plan and what we want to see be pushed and included into the regional and local plans. And so I think there is a direct linkage there. I don't want to say, and I'm not in a position at this point to give you specific examples other than to say that generally speaking there should be a direct linkage there, and certainly the Talent Pipeline Management Guide is a great resource and something to point to as a best practice. And Kim and Vicki, if you have a link to where that is posted, that'd be great if you could share it in the chat. And if not, we can see if we can post that on our website and as a follow-up to this webinar. And let's see, Josh. I see. Thank you again for posting the direct link to the environmental scan. Any other questions from the phone? Oh, here I see we've got additional. I'm not scrolling down. Kathy, yes. Kathy Lively, yes. I would agree that that the local boards are absolutely the lead in the local plan development. Yes. Are the regional? Let's see. Val Harris, are the regional planning processes that are already being used, like adult ed planning process, going to be integrated? Yes. And I hope that was the intent of, or how some of us categorize the quote-unquote phase one ICCB workforce and education planning process or strategic planning process. We hope that we're building off of what we're learning, and that is always the intent. And if anyone from ICCB wants to add to that, I definitely welcome your additional comments there. Okay, so let's see. Jennifer Storino, point of contact, yes. Again, I think reiterating the local plan, and again, there is a lot of history around the local plans, and I think the board is definitely your kind of the preeminent place to start with that process. And again, we know that it's going to be a little different as we move forward in what is required to be included and how it builds, and how those elements translate, throughout the kind of the pyramid of what is in a local, regional, and state plan. Okay. And thank you, Kim, for the talent pipeline link there.
John, this is Gretchen. There are a couple other questions that came in that I'm happy to take.
Perfect,
yeah,
great.
If that'd be helpful. So there was a question from Jennifer about, it was her understanding that she's the point of contact for the workforce boards and workforce services, and it was her understanding that each partner had identified a like point of contact on the teams. And I just wanted to clarify that for purposes of team communications and logistics, we did ask each team to identify a single point of contact that we facilitators have been working with. And in many cases, that is someone from, the workforce board or the workforce system. Actually, in most cases, I think that is the case. But there is a single point of contact for each team. The other key partners on the team have not also identified additional points of contact. We're trying to, to streamline communication, kind of funnel it all through one person. But obviously, the other partners that are on the team have there are team members representing those other partners on the team. So I did just want to clarify the point of contact question. And Pam had also asked a question about will there be a format for the plan available at the December meeting, and I wrote back that yes, we do have a planning template that we'll be using during our work together to capture the team's discussions and output. And Pam, your follow-up question was, and this will be for plan development. And I think, and John chime in here, if you have anything to add, the strategies that we'll be focusing on developing for targeted industry sectors at the meeting, absolutely, I think you will ultimately want to use them in the regional plans that you are developing moving forward and ultimately submitting. But we are not coming to the meeting with an outline of every single element that you will need in your WIOA regional plans. We're really focusing on a couple key areas around resource alignment and leveraging, building partnerships region-wide, creating collaborative strategies to support employers and job seekers in your targeted industries, that sort of a thing. So this isn't, every element of your WIOA regional plan, but some key strategic areas that I imagine you will ultimately want to include in those. So I hope that helps answer that question. Thank you for the follow-up.
Okay, and Gretchen, I see Kathy Lively had a question, and that is important to point out that the materials that all of you on the teams have received, they are extremely fresh. Those were just sent out yesterday, and we know that and appreciate your responsiveness around this. We know that it's a big challenge to get this information put together, and then also appreciate the efforts of the point of contact to get this information out as soon as they receive it, and they're definitely working to do that. Definitely in the as we get moving here, if you do have questions, I think that was really the intent of putting this table together on the FAQ page for your point of contact is if you're if you need question, or if you have questions and need to get brought up to speed or have needs of the facilitators or other members, definitely email the point of contact and hopefully they can get to the right spot there. If not, certainly you can email someone here on the state team, and I'll put my contact information. I know all or most of you know Lisa Jones and Julio Rodriguez from the Commerce team here. Certainly hope to connect you to the right resources and get you the information as soon as we have it. But bottom line, appreciate your patience as we pull this all together. Are there questions from the phone? Yes, so if the region only has one workforce area, is there one regional plan, one local? Probably, but we'll have to wait and see what the guidance shows, and how is it technically characterized from a compliance standpoint from the federal agencies. Okay. Will LMI be available by county? That will be a question that we'll have to respond to on the FAQs. I don't know that for sure.
This is Evelina Loescher. I believe that the data was created to form the economic development region because it is a regional plan, but certainly much LMI is available by county if people wanted to look at that.
Right, and that's one of the things I would add, that as we meet in next week, that we can identify if there are specific data needs of a region. We can talk about those with the data team and see what is available. Okay, are there any other questions? Well, with that, I just want to thank you all for your patience, your responsiveness, and your involvement in this process. We look forward to working with you all next week. And certainly if you have any additional follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to contact your point of contact or other member of the state team, and we will hope to respond to those questions as soon as we can. So with that, I'll go ahead and, Gretchen or Carrie, if you have anything, or any other partner, if you have anything else you'd like to add.
And it's Gretchen. I just want to say on behalf of the facilitator team, just want to say thank you so much to our points of contact who have just job of coordinating communications. Really, really appreciate all the work that you've been doing. And, we've had the opportunity to have some calls to get to know our teams and really appreciate their time on that. We're all very excited to meet you in person next week and work with you. We know we've been sharing a lot of information, close to the meetings in a bit of a flurry. And Kathy, Lively, to your point, we really appreciate your help getting that out and know that that is fresh, as John said. But just really wanted to thank you all, and we're really looking forward to seeing you next week.
Great. All right. Well, again, thank you all for participating today, and we will work with you all next week. Thank you all. Goodbye.